I stopped believing the penguin was lost the third time we carried him back to the colony. By then, I had learned the exact weight of his body in my arms, the way his heart beat. Slow, confident, wrong for something that was supposedly panicking. Each time, we released him at the edge of the surf, watched him disappear among the others, and told ourselves the same story. Disorientation, faulty navigation, a damaged internal compass. And each time, days later, he was found again, facing away from the water, walking inland, toward the mountains. Always the mountains. What finally broke me wasn't that he kept leaving. It was that he never looked back. I was part of the research team assigned to document the anomaly. On paper, it was a low-risk behavioral study. A single tagged penguin displaying persistent deviation from migratory norms. The kind of thing you write dry reports about and forget. But I had already been living a life shaped by repetition and quiet failure. A marriage dissolved by distance. A child who learned not to expect replies. I had chosen this work because animals didn't ask why you stayed gone so long. The road inland was narrow and pale, a scar across an endless plain. Driving it felt like being slowly erased. No trees, no buildings, just the sound of the engine and the wind dragging itself across the land. At night, the headlights barely seemed to touch the darkness ahead, as if it absorbed light instead of reflecting it. I remember checking the mirrors too often, unsettled by the feeling that something behind me was learning my shape. We found him again just after dusk. He stood in the road, waiting, not collapsed, not injured, waiting. When the headlights hit him, his shadow stretched unnaturally long across the asphalt, bending slightly where the road dipped, like it didn't quite agree with the ground. I stepped out of the vehicle, heart thudding harder than it should have. The air was cold enough to sting my lungs. The penguin tilted his head, and for a moment I had the overwhelming sensation of being evaluated. That night, after we returned him to the colony yet again, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bunk, listening to the distant ocean, and realized something simple and terrible. If he was lost, he would hesitate. If he was confused, he would stop. But he didn't. He was commuting. So the next time he left, I followed him. I waited until night, until the others were asleep and the radio chatter faded into static. I drove alone, keeping my distance, letting him set the pace. The engine's low rumble felt intrusive, like I was violating a silence that had been there long before me. Time stretched thin, minutes folded into each other. The road climbed gradually and the air grew sharper, drier. Stars emerged one by one, too bright, too numerous. I had the unsettling impression they were arranged with intention, like markers rather than decoration. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I became acutely aware of my breathing, of the way my chest felt slightly compressed, as if the altitude was changing faster than it should have. The penguin never slowed. As the terrain shifted from road to rock, I abandoned the vehicle and continued on foot. Each step echoed faintly, swallowed almost immediately. The cold seeped through my boots. My muscles ached, but underneath the fatigue was something else, anticipation, sharp and electric. The mountains rose ahead of us, jagged silhouettes against a dim sky. As we climbed, the sense of isolation deepened into something heavier, like pressure underwater. I began to hear things that didn't quite resolve into sound, rhythms, patterns, a suggestion of voices carried not through air, but through bone. The penguin stopped at a narrow pass. He turned to look at me. I wish I could explain what was wrong about his eyes. Not their shape, not their color. It was the depth. The way they reflected the stars too clearly. as if they weren't surfaces at all, but openings. For the first time since I'd known him, he blinked. Slowly, deliberately. Then he continued on. The pass opened into a high basin, ringed by stone. The ground was smooth, worn down by something that had passed through countless times. The air vibrated faintly, like a distant engine left running. My teeth chattered, not entirely from cold. My thoughts began to fracture, memories surfacing without context, standing at the edge of my son's bedroom door, choosing not to go in, watching my marriage end in quiet sentences. Figures emerged from the shadows at the basin's edge. Not suddenly, gradually, as if my eyes were adjusting to a wavelength they hadn't been built for. They were tall, thin, and asymmetrical, their forms suggesting life without committing to any one anatomy. Limbs bent the wrong way, faces implied rather than defined. Their movements were slow, ceremonial, ancient. I felt no immediate terror, only recognition, like hearing a word you've forgotten the meaning of but still know is important. They were waiting for him. The penguin stepped forward and something in him changed. Not physically, not all at once. The way he held himself shifted. The illusion thinned. I understood then why he had needed the ocean, the depths where light fails and pressure remakes the body. Why he had returned to the sea again and again, diving deeper than any instrument we could follow. He had been retrieving something, fragments, artifacts, old things scattered in the dark places of the world where human curiosity rarely survives. The colony had been camouflage, a way to move unnoticed, a way to gather without suspicion. Each return to the mountains had been a report, a delivery. And now, the work was done. The figures seemed to acknowledge him, not with words, but with a subtle shift in the air, a resonance that settled into my chest and made breathing difficult. I realized, with a clarity that bordered on calm, that this was not an invasion. It was maintenance. Earth was never meant to last. I took an unsteady step backward. The ground responded immediately. The vibration I had felt before surged upward, snapping into motion. The figures moved all at once, no longer ceremonial, no longer slow. The air around me thickened, pressing against my skin, my lungs. I fell hard onto the stone, the impact knocking the breath from me. Panic flooded in, hot and immediate. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. They were on me, not tearing, not striking, overlapping. Their forms pressed close, their presence invading my senses, filling my head with pressure and static. My vision blurred. I couldn't tell where my body ended and the stone began. Every instinct screamed to fight, to run, but my limbs refused to answer. I understood then that this was how they erased things, not with violence, with forgetting. I tried to scream, but the sound never left my chest. And then, it stopped. The pressure lifted just enough for me to suck in a shallow, burning breath. Through the haze, I saw the penguin standing between me and them. He was still small, still familiar, but the disguise had grown thin, stretched, like a skin worn too long. I felt his attention settle on me again. This time, it was different. I don't know how I understood what he was saying. There were no words, just intention, memory, the echo of hands lifting him gently from the road, of water poured over cracked feet, of someone choosing to carry rather than abandon. You tried to return what was never yours to keep. The figures hesitated. The penguin shifted slightly, an almost imperceptible motion, and the pressure eased further. My fingers twitched. My breath steadied, though my chest still burned. Whatever judgment was being made, it was final. The figures withdrew. They folded back into the shadows, their shapes unraveling into the stone, the air, the faint vibration beneath my feet. One by one, they were gone. The basin felt suddenly vast and empty, the silence absolute. The penguin lingered. For a moment, I thought he might speak. Instead, he simply looked at me, head tilted, eyes reflecting the dim, wrong stars above. Then he turned and walked toward the center of the basin. The ground pulsed once, and he vanished with them. They never found the penguin again. The reports say he disappeared. Likely exposure, likely predation. End of data set. I didn't argue. I couldn't have, even if I wanted to. Some truths are too large to survive being said aloud. I left not long after. Sometimes, when the night is quiet and my thoughts slow enough to wander, I feel a familiar pull, subtle, directional. Not toward the mountains, toward the sea. And I know, with a certainty that still tightens my chest, that when the time comes for the maintenance to resume, I will not be counted among the things to be erased.